What's up, guys? Welcome back to another Modified Rides podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Brandon Burrell. Today, I have one of the, I guess you would say, mini trucking OGs. Kind of had his hands in a few different things back when I started my whole photography career. Actually, I think he was involved well before I was. This week, I have Chad Lucas. What's going on, Chad?
Not much. How you doing?
Good. So if for those that like the OG mini truck guys, you know, the name Chad Lucas, you know, is something that was in the standard list of names back then. If any of the new guys, you may not know who he is. He kind of moved a little bit. So
I'm still super cool, I swear.
whatever we have to keep telling ourselves.
Hey, I'm just trying to pat myself on the back over here.
So Chad, you know, Chad's been one of the magazine guys, but I guess let's step back even further, like I always do, and see how he got into the custom vehicle world. Like, what got you involved in custom vehicles, cars, trucks? What was it?
It probably didn't start with custom initially. Like when I was really young, I had the 6-foot Lamborghini poster. You know what I mean? When I was like really young, which is like way longer, than me. Yeah, the Countach.
Yeah.
Started with that, and then probably when I got to high school, like you'd see certain vehicles running around, and I graduated in '96, so probably in that early '90s. There's like a mini truck at my high school, and then he put air shocks in the back. You're like kind of like, oh man. Then all of a sudden, he actually he had his roll pan and his license plate French at Sir Michael's, like directly at Sir Michael's. They used to actually install the stuff there, and so it was all angled and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, holy crap! Like I thought I was so edgy and the coolest thing, And so mine starts going, you know what I mean? And I'm flipping through Auto Trader and like, what am I going to get when I'm 16? And
where'd you grow up at?
Laverne, California. So it's okay. Like on the outskirts of LA County.
So with you growing up in Southern California, you'd see more vehicles, custom vehicles running around than I would on the East Coast. So now, other than the guy you said that was in your high school that had the mini truck, what really got you hooked in the custom vehicle world? Was it that one?
That was probably one. That's probably it. But there was a group of guys, you know what I mean? Like it was like you said, Independent Illusions. I had a buddy that lived down the street to me. I didn't really know him that well at the time, but and this is back when people have their names were hand painted on the corner in the back window, and if they had a girlfriend, it was on that side, and
yeah.
It was always kind of stuff like that. But it was around that time, full logos on the back of the window. But there was, like I said, there was that whole group called Independent Illusions. They had a couple guys that were directly involved around our high school. So you'd see a lot of those cars initially. And then after that, locally you had seductive and explicit attitudes. And so I guess you start to see that. And I grew up right where In-N-Out pretty much came from, so it's that's always a cruise spot, you know what I mean? So yeah. When I was old enough, I wouldn't say when I was 15 hey mom, drop me off at In-N-Out. I'm just gonna go troll around with all these people, but when I got to the point of driving, then it gets to the point of all right, cool, let's go check some stuff out. And then but yeah, my first vehicle was a mini truck. It was an Isuzu Pup single cab.
Was that when you were in high school still?
Or yeah 3 cylinders strong, man. Fourth one needed a valve job. So but that was the first one, yeah. It was an Isuzu, believe it or not. And I was always a big Nissan guy, funny enough. So
did you get the Isuzu cut up and stuff back then, or?
It wasn't really to that extent yet, because I probably had it from maybe 94 to maybe 96 or maybe 97 at tops. So you really didn't have things cut up, and I wasn't that deep in it yet. I had seen air shocks in the back of a vehicle, maybe, but it was an old Spectrum Minis truck, and it really wasn't my style, but it was whatever your parents help you with at that point, you know what I mean? They're like, you're going to own a stick shift because you're going to learn how to drive a stick shift. So
I don't think kids now know how to do that. I know my daughter.
No, you got to go try to track 24. One. Yeah, you got to try to go track one down, on my vehicle now, I have that low car E-Matic shifter. I could upshift and downshift it if I want to, but that's as far as it goes, So.
Mine tried to get me to teach her on my wife's, the WRX that she had, we built for SEMA. And I'm like, I'm not teaching you on that car and you destroying the clutch. You need an old Civic like I learned on.
Yeah, right. That's exactly. You got to find something you could ride that clutch until you get smooth and hopefully don't destroy it in the process, right?
So where... After school, did you go to college or just go straight to work?
I was an athlete, so funny enough, I played soccer my whole life, and if anybody ever saw me during a lot of the mini truck years, I was a pretty big guy at one point. I became mini truck heavy. There's plenty of those guys. So I got pretty big, you know what I mean? Where fortunately in the mini truck community, they make shirts to fit that lifestyle always, that and Dickies. So yeah, so I mean, I played high school and college soccer and club soccer. So like my high school team was like sixth in state in California, and like my club team won state cup, and I played against like ex-professional and national team players and all that. So I played like for a long time, but then I put on a bunch of weight. Like all that got put on hold for a while, and all the mini truck stuff gained a lot of weight through just going to shows and doing all that stuff. And then eventually, probably before I worked at mini truck, and I dropped about 100 pounds and got, doing sports again. But then I started working with the magazine, you know what I mean? So, but it was a lot more mobile at that point, at least.
I've always joked and said a 2X T-shirt is a mini trucker small. So
yeah. I started lifting weights and everything like that to lose weight back in the day. And when I was at a good point, I'd stretch out a double X shirt up top with no gut, and then back in the day it was like a 3X, and it's like up top is loose, and that midsection is like, oh, it's not getting any bigger. We're cutting it close.
So what got you involved in the magazine world? I know before we started recording, you said you had a pretty good job before you did that move.
Yeah. I took a pay cut to work at the magazine, believe it or not. So, but kind of a lifestyle kind of job, you know what I mean? And the company that I had worked with, I had always been into something to do with cars or car audio, like where do you get a job if you're into custom cars? Like where do you get a job back then that had anything to do with cars or trucks? So car audio is probably the closest thing that was normal, and people back then had like walls of 612s and all that stuff. So that was a little bit more normal.
Only shops that were really out. There wasn't a lot of custom shops. It was like you'd have audio shops on every other corner, but no custom shops then in the late 90s like that. So who were you working for before you went into the magazine? Because it was not in the automotive world at all, was it?
It was automotive. It was 12-volt electronics, I guess you could say. So it's like, so I worked for a car stereo shop in California, and after that I ended up working for a manufacturer. And this is when like TV screens and LCDs for cars were like a big deal.
Yeah.
And so I worked at a place called Excel Electronics or Excel Vision. It was like a big hardware company. So you had like door poppers and you had like linear actuators and all that kind of electronic hardware. But we had a ton of stuff like LCD screens, like 1.8 inch all the way up to like 30 inch at one point. We had bigger selection than anybody in the entire the country at that point.
Yeah.
So, but we were like one of the first places to do like DVD players for cars, headrest monitors, like raw monitors, like for custom installations. I handled some of the sponsorship stuff on that end. And so like I was like one of the people that like sponsored Pimp My Ride on a bunch of those things back in the day for whatever ludicrous vehicles they were building. But yeah, but I knew some of the guys over there, because if you remember Ryan Friedlinghouse, he's an ex-mini trucker. He's an NC guy from back in the day. And then like Alex Anderson and Ghetto Bob worked there. Absolutely. So it's like Ghetto
Bob on a couple episodes ago.
Yeah. He's a good dude. I don't remember if it was Alex that hit me up, maybe, because I knew Alex really well, or maybe Ghetto, one of those guys hit me up. And so, and then Mad Mike used to like hit me up and just like, hey, we did this, blah, 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 blah. But I kind of got into it with their producer too at one point, because it was like, if you're going to get a product, you at least have to tell people what it is when you're showing it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I remember, like the guy, I'm not going to get his name. He's actually producing one of the newer television shows too, but I was probably 23 at the time. And I'm like getting this dude's face, like at SEMA or CES, one of these things. I'm just kind of like, hey man, we're going to cut you off if you don't do this. And he's probably like thinking, who's this punk kid? So, kind of funny. But yeah, I was a regional sales manager when I was really young, so I had the, ability to build some of the stuff that I was doing. So
what led you towards Mini Trucking Magazine though?
I had already had a truck on the cover. My Nissan was already on the cover of Mini Trucking. And then
I thought you were working there when it was on the cover.
Oh no, not even that. Even my blue truck was done before I worked there. So my blue truck I didn't even start building until after the Mini truck was already way done. And so but yeah, so I probably got shot 2 years before I worked there, probably.
And what year did you go to work for Mini Trucking?
Oh man. God, I'm old, man. I don't have a good memory.
You're 2 years younger than me if you graduated in 96.
Yeah. So Well, I've been in October. I will have been up here 19 years, and I probably quit the magazine and worked at another place for maybe a couple months, and then I moved up here. So it was just trying to shake up my life, like when I moved when I left there. But like part of the reason that I got the job at Mini Truckin' was, I mean, it's kind of interesting, and you'll know this because you've done a lot of like editorial stuff and you've done photography. How many people do you know that are enthusiasts that know photography that also are you know, good writers. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Or at least in sometimes you have car guys that are like they're super smart. They'll know all this stuff, but as far as putting that on paper, not always a good thing. You want somebody who's decently able to like at least talk between people or figure things out. And I had taken photography in college, and but we used to have to develop our films. So when I started working at Mini Trucking, it was like right in the transition, like
Gotcha.
right there between like we still had to look at film and do all that, and then I think we had a Canon 10D and a Canon 20D. Like that was the two cameras that were like probably ancient by now standards, but
20
at
was
the
my
time,
first DSLR. Was the 20D.
yeah. So I had a pretty good understanding of photography. It was just about like adapting that to the car world. You know what I mean? But yeah, I took a pay cut to work there, and at the time, Lance Martz was the editor,
Okay.
and when I told him and I were pretty close, so when I told him I was doing it, he was like, "Really? Like what? You want to work here?" He was like kind of shocked because he knew I made good money in doing what I was doing, but my Pathfinder had like been it was such an extreme project. Sometimes it's one of those vehicles like wherever it would go, it would kind of get put on the back burner a little bit because it's a lot of work. And there's a difference between a shop and a business. If you're a shop, I mean, you're always trying to do something cool. But if you're a business, it's all about making money, and that little stuff will kind of trickle its way in the back. And
Yeah.
so I just knew wherever I take my truck, it was such a big task for everybody because it was so over the top that it would just sit in the background and it would never be a priority at any place. But I was like, if I get to work at the magazine, especially if I get to like Lance told me, he goes, people want to see this thing done. You could do whatever you want to do for the most part. And so I ended up, I was like, okay, this will give me leverage to get my truck done. I'm not
I don't
joking.
know why I
This
was thinking that it was done after you were already there. So,
No, like in that, like that truck was done, and then I got my blue truck, and the blue truck was done, and then my blue truck was done, but it hadn't been shot yet. And then I was on the floor of like Mike Finnegan was at Sport Truck, and then Steve Warner ran trucking. And Steve Warner's giving me crap about like I'm gonna shoot it like this. I'm like I already promised this Mike and those guys a long time ago. So I didn't really know Steve at the time. Now he's my boss. I'm like he's trying to strong arm me. I was just like that was kind of a tough one, but
now what
but
what was you hired on at Mini Trucking as? You remember what your title was?
yeah. There's only two essentially there for that associate editor at the time,
Okay.
and
And then Lance
yeah,
was the
so
editor.
yeah, that was like for a week, man. I mean, I was there for a week and the Lance was gone.
Really?
Yeah. So Lance is the one that hired me, but that didn't last. So I really never got to work with Lance. I
Did
knew
he
Lance pretty
know
well.
did he know he was leaving or when you come in?
Not exactly. That was just one of those probably a little deeper than I know about all the truth about that. But it was just he had been there quite a while. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think he's done pretty well since he's gone there. He's still like I think is he still at Vire?
No, he's been gone from Vire for a while.
So that shows how much I know. See, but that was a thing. So he went there. So I mean, at least the industry was able to give him something. But I hadn't talked to him in a long
Yeah.
time. But like after he left, I mean, that's kind of it's an awkward situation.
So
So
you got hired on as associate editor, then you immediately got bumped up to editor, right?
no, not believe it or not, no. So what happened was it was in limbo, and Mike Alexander had just been pulled over to Truckin' Magazine. I don't even know how many people know this, but he went over there and so I took his job. And so he was at Truckin', and then all of a sudden they needed to find a new editor. Then Mike came back.
Gotcha.
So yeah, so it was Mike and me, Mike Alexander and I that ran that I was there probably a year and 9 months, maybe roughly, and that was in the time frame when the magazine pages expanded and it went full color.
Yeah, I know
So
Mike always takes the credit for the making everything full color. So
well, that's true. That's very true. I mean, I was there. I was probably one of the only ones that was there to see the process of it and like trying to get the budget for it, and then our person that like does all the, and people don't realize how much other weird little stuff is kind of going on around there, because you have copy editors. Like my copy editor was like she had like a master's in playwright. She's not a car person, but they have to make sure the magazine, everything is really
grammatically right.
streamlined too. You know what I mean? It's all got to kind of follow some kind of path, you know what I mean, to be professional. So, and then our art director, like she was this little Asian lady. She was super nice. I mean, spoke English, I think. She'd nod and smile, but she was super nice. But it was like most of the Photoshop, when I was there, most of the photoshopping, photo correction, a lot of stuff was done by me, because funny enough, art directors a lot of times do more layout.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you've been privy to like seeing the process of that now. Yeah. So it's like they're usually doing a lot of layout and stuff like that. So as far as like anything that had to be modified or like really messed with, like I did that. You know what I mean? So like I was kind of self-taught on Photoshop, and that started when I was like trying to like do rendering as my own vehicles, and then like, I would fix some of my photos, or Mike would be like, hey, can you fix this photo? Like things like that. So I did a lot of that kind of stuff too, behind the scenes.
Kind of the same way. I kind of taught myself the editing side of it, photos. I kind of taught myself how to write, and it's like there forever. It's like I hate writing. It's like I realized it wasn't that I hate writing. It's like I hate starting that article. But once you get that first paragraph in, it just falls into place. But
I went a way different route than everybody else would go, because whenever I'd read the magazine, I would always hate when people would be like, and if you go read any of my old stuff, you could see it in at least like 90% of stuff that I wrote. I always try to make it moderately interesting. I don't want to be like, so he did this, and he bought the truck, and then he did this, and then he took it down here and got it slammed here, and this, that, here, and this, there. So much of that stuff's in the bio at the very end. You know what I mean? So I always would like dig people, and I'd talk to them. I'm like, hey man, I got your stuff here, but I want to ask you some questions, and I would drill them on the phone.
Yeah, that's
right. I'd sit there and like, and a lot of people didn't do that. There are so many of these articles and so many magazines that were just so like cut and paste. You insert name, insert vehicle, this, that, and the other, and it's just like I never liked that. That. I just like, yeah, you could tell me all this stuff and it's in the bio. I'll read the bio, you know what I mean? Like, but I would ask questions, because let's be honest, man. I mean, that's blood, sweat, and tears, and it's lifestyle, and it's like, and nobody could ever say that like, oh yeah, I just finished my truck. It was like wham, bam, done. There's no interesting story to it. BS, man.
Well, that's what I usually, when I'm shooting something, I'll spend that time, like, why did you do this? You're there for an hour or two BSing with them, cutting up, but I love the ones where someone will fill out the text sheet and there's like 3/4 of it still empty. And you're like, well, I guess I'm going to make some shit up on this because I have no clue what they did.
Yeah. And that's what I would usually try to get people on the phone and I'd kind of drill them. So when I have the text sheet, I'd have that. But then I try to drill them, because I'm like, I don't want to write about like necessarily directly like the nuts and bolts of the build on this. I want to write about like, like what did you go through to make this thing done? Because the thing is every mini trucker, every custom car guy has a vision and has a dream. And not a lot of people realize that dream. There are people we probably both know that have been building stuff for 20 years plus that have never finished one project. You know what I mean? Hopes and dreams. They bought 50 different roll pans because they ripped them all off over a period of time, and their stuff never progresses that forward. Or if they do get it done, it's kind of like by that point maybe the style of it's not too, cool anymore or whatever. I mean, and so I mean, I don't know. I mean, you want to be like positive and you want to like help people like get through their stuff. But by the time people have finished this, that's a small group of people. You know what I mean? So, and being in a magazine, which is like far and few in between now, but that was the goal. I mean, internet magazines are cool. That's cool, but there's a lot of them. But to be in print and like getting your truck shot for the cover, man, that was it. And then you get that call from In the News, like to build your plaque. You know what I mean? Like,
or In the News ain't even in business anymore.
Yeah, right. But I'm all pretty hooked up on that. I knew a guy over there. He'd hit me up like, hey, do you know how to get a hold of this guy? But like, they were always great.
Ryan?
Oh God, man, it was so long
Ryan's
ago.
The one that always got with me, because I remember he called me one day out of the blue because I bought some plaques for the stuff that I had featured, and he was like, "Man, it shows you were the photographer on this. When did you get into doing photos?" I'm like, "Oh, a while back." And he's like, then after that, it was like, "Hey, how do I get with Jim? I can't find his before social media stuff," and I'd give him his phone number or whatever. So probably the same guy.
Yeah, and I had bought extra plaques too. If there were certain people that were involved in my build, like of course Bob Grant, like I bought him a plaque. Here, dude,
Same.
like, please, I
Shops
think
that
it's
did
important.
mine or have my stuff that they'd help me build hanging in their shop still. So I'm same way on
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. And like in and especially the Pathfinder, man, that was kind of that was a life altering vehicle. That was one of those things that like going through stuff like that teaches you a lot about the rights and the wrongs and what to do and what not to do. And a lot of people end up spending like 3-4 times. They spend that money over and over again on the same thing because things keep getting redone or things keep getting changed. And so when I built my blue truck, like I had an absolute path to it and I had a budget
Yeah.
and hit it on the nose. And it was like I already learned all my mistakes on vehicle one. You know what I mean? So on that next one, obviously that was it got done and taken care of pretty quick.
Well,
You know what I mean?
let's dive into the rest of the magazine stuff, and then I definitely want to get into your builds because the
Yeah.
Pathfinder is probably one of the most iconic mini SUVs that was out there. So with you and Mike running mini trucking for a while, and you said you stayed there how long?
I was there about a year and 9 months or so, just shy of 2 years.
And I guess being you were, God, what was it then? Was it Prime Media then, or was it Source Interlink then?
It was Prime Media at that time, yeah.
I know they changed names 15 times, so
Before that, it was McMullen Argus, man. Just kept getting bought out.
I'd get a check in the mail and I'd be like, "Who is this?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's."
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
As long as money's coming, right?
but I guess you probably still dabbled with some of the other magazines because y'all were all in the same office. So you probably still shot some
Yeah,
for the other ones.
I had some stuff that was like written that had been in some of the other magazines too. Like whether Sport Truck or Truckin' or maybe like, and sometimes he would share like features. You know what I mean? Like, hey, we
Yeah.
need this for this, and they'd share it. So I mean, that would happen too. So I was kind of listed as a contributor on those too. And before I left, believe it or not, Steve Warner actually wanted to pull me over to Truckin' before I left. So,
And when did you leave?
um, gosh, so I've been gone 18 and a half years. So whatever that is. So I mean, it was probably about
Oh
maybe
five.
October. No, probably pretty close to that. Yeah, probably right around there. I mean, yeah, I'd really have to probably dig deep to like I just found some Prime Media business cards the other day. But yeah, I mean, it's probably almost on the nose right now. It probably be about 19 years, almost on the nose from when I left. So
So I
yeah.
know you had mentioned before we come on that you kind of had a little bit of help with Mike Alexander and Mike Finnegan being involved with the magazine.
In the most odd way. I'm not gonna like take credit like I'm the reason all this. You
Yeah,
know what I
yeah,
mean? But I had a funny like part in it, I guess you could say. Because I knew Mike Finnegan, of course, like before he ever worked there. And he had come from New York because he ran, and so he had come from New York, and he was like staying in front of Courtney's house, and he was supposed to go to his interview, but like finance started running kind of low. You know what I mean? So um, and so yeah, I actually I'm the one that I filled up gas in his tank to get to his first ever interview for mini trucking. We were good friends, and I was within my means. You know what I mean? So I helped him out and did that. So that was a funny one there. And obviously when they were filling that position again, I mean I knew Lance really well. Um, and I was sitting in his office, and he's going back and forth on kind of like who he's hiring, all this stuff, and I kind of like Mike Alexander and I were already friends. He actually lived really close to me, like I mean, probably like down the street almost. And so I kind of was like, you know what, you should do this because, you know, and I guess I was just he was a hardcore dude. Like he had an S10 way back in the day that was all chopped to heck, and like, mini trucks, man. It's like if you're
yep.
not on the verge of salvaging your vehicle, did you do something that cool? So that's kind of how we looked at it. I mean, I don't know. We probably talked a little too much trash back in the day, like in hindsight, because you want to be like positive for other people in the scene that you're excited they're in the scene too, and I learned a lot from like Josh Freeman it was part of that, just super upbeat guy. But yeah, like I just had I had a big talk with Lance, and after that I had a talk with Lance, well, this is who you need to hire, and then he did. So was I like the one that made it happen? I don't know. Did I maybe like nudge him in the direction? I mean, yeah, because it happened pretty quickly after that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, what led you to leave mini trucking?
Just life, you know what I mean? Like part of the reasons I went to mini trucking didn't really come to fruition the way it was, you know what I mean? I really like to do it, but traveling all the time is really cool until you're not in the mood to. You know
Well,
what I mean?
I guess back then you guys traveled like there, even though there was freelancers like me that was doing like some of the East Coast stuff, you guys traveled quite a bit on like the company's dime.
Yeah, yeah, but a lot of the shows would pay for it too. It just depends because the budget's not as otherworldly as people would think it is, you
Oh,
know.
oh,
But
trust me, I know.
yeah, so a lot of times if a show promoter wanted you to come out, you had to like you map out what shows you could do because you can't do them all, you know, I mean, regardless. And so yeah, sometimes the show promoters would be the one that would fly you out. It would just depend on the show.
Yeah.
So
Um, so when you decided it was time to leave, what was your next move after that? You moved to where you're at now?
no, not right away actually. So I it's kind of interesting. So I had a buddy. I was in a relationship with what we'll call a questionable girl. That's the
We all
best.
had those.
That's part. That's probably part of the demise right there. But it was like, but I, but I guess at my age at the time, you know, it's like when you're dating somebody, your provider role kind of kicks in more in the back of your head, depending on how you're raised, of course.
Yeah.
And that happens. And at the time, the mini trucking job, it was like really cool. But like I kind of worked there almost because I was like I had the Pathfinder, but if it would have get worked on, it would be pushed to the back burner a little bit. So if I worked at the magazine, that would give a little bit more like, okay, well, I can get this done, and like at least we could like for the magazine, we need to be it to be done by this date. You know what I mean? So at least it would like have, and I'm not a pushy guy, you know what I mean? So having something behind me to kind of like force a hand, you know what I mean? Like that's part of what it was. I'm like, because everything was so extreme on it, it was like, if I keep at this rate, I'm not going to get done with this thing for 10 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I kind of wanted to like get it done and kind of move on with my life a little bit, you know? And then I started dating a girl that I met at a car show. Speaking of which, you know, and that all happened, and that didn't work out, of course. But at that same point, it kind of kick started me to like, all right, well, I need to like start getting my act together, you know, and like, and so I took another job that was, you know, promised for like a lot more money, but it was probably one of the worst, most miserable jobs I've ever been at. You know what I mean? So it just sucked. And so probably within a month after that, I moved up to Boise, Idaho.
What brought you to Boise? Do you have family
I
there?
had a lot of friends. We had a Severed Ties chapter up here, of course. No family to this day. My niece moves here next week
Nice.
because she took a scholarship at Boise State. So now I'm sure my family will visit more now that she's up here too. Yeah. So, but yeah, but I have no family here, and I've been up here like 18, 19 years. But I originally moved in with some of the Severed Ties guys up here. That you know we were all friends, of course. We all knew each other. So I did that, and then yeah. But at that point, is also where it kind of started to pull away because financially, I didn't make quite as much money bouncing around. Not that I made a lot of money at Mini Truck, and that wasn't a high paying job, but you just get a lot of fringe benefits. But the
Yeah.
job before that, I made really good money. And so, and also down in California, I had more hustles, I guess you could say. You know, you have like I work at the Pomona swap meet like once every 6 weeks, you know, and I'd sell a lot of hardware from the old company I worked at, and I could make it quick, like you know, $1,000 in 6 hours, and go dump that into Project A, you know,
Yeah.
and it made things easier, you know what I mean? And but when I moved up here, it was kind of like shaking myself, let's get my life going, you know, because I was, you know, 27, and I just felt kind of stagnant. You know what I mean? I felt kind of stagnant. I was like, okay, like, and with the car thing, it's like, how long do I have to push off all this other stuff because of the truck or the car? You know, and like,
Yeah.
and in California, people live with their parents a long time, but I mean, I was like, I had started that Nissan when I was in my, I don't know, early 20s. And so then by your mid 20s, you're like kind of like you're dumping all this money and you're making good money, but you're still living with your parents. You're just like, dude, like you can't do that. And other people around the country, they might be like, who does that? Trust me, man, it's not as hard, not as easy in California. It's really expensive. So if you live in some podunk city and you got to pay, you know, $300 for a house payment, that wasn't the case.
I wish there
So
was still a $300 house payment nowadays.
yeah,
So
yeah, but you get my point though. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah,
It was just shake things up. You know what I mean? Like I had gone to college and I had done all that stuff, but none of that really, you know, created that created that for me, I guess you could say, as far as, and I had a career and I was making great money. And the reason that left that opening to go to the magazine is I had made a pretty big pay increase every year I was there until that last year. Then it started kind of going like this. So I saw the downhill fall of it. I'm like, I'm gonna need to figure out something else. That's when I took the pay cut to go work for the magazine because I was like, well, I'm gonna go down anyway. Let's try this out, do this, you know, and maybe that'll, you know, just put me on a different trajectory, I guess.
Now, who replaced you when you left mini trucking? Was that
Ernie did.
Ernie?
Ernie
Okay.
Macias, yeah. It was funny. He posted, I don't remember, it was like MySpace or something. Like he posted some, remember those, like, those, what do you call them? Those, what are those things? Those like surveys people do. Like, have you ever done this? Have you ever done this?
Oh,
And then
like the
people
polls
post
and
them.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. It was funny. Like, I remember, like, there was a question on there. It was like, have you ever had the sex at work? And I was like, and Ernie had my old desk. I was like, yeah, sorry, Ernie. And he tests back. He's like, you mother.
Oops.
Yeah, no, but Ernie and I talked quite a bit. I had known Ernie for quite a while. We were pretty close. I mean, yeah, I had known him quite a while, so we definitely talked a while before he got the job, you know. So about, you know, what to expect and what to do, and, you know, how to handle Mike. This is
Yeah.
what you do. You just put your hand up, you know. See.
We all have to handle Mike like that. He still
Yeah,
gives me shit to this day. So
yeah.
if he's
But
not giving me shit, then I think I'm doing something wrong. So
yeah, no, that's the thing. Like, Ernie was a great dude. You know, I think he did a great job after I left, so that was cool. You know.
I always joke and said that I got to shoot the one vehicle that Mike actually finished, that black Toyota.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because there forever he never finished anything. So
I wasn't going to want to bring it up, but yeah.
well, speaking of unfinished stuff, so that's a good segue into the Pathfinder.
Oh, perfect.
So with
Still
your
living large.
Pathfinder, you said you bought that new.
Not new, but I bought it off the lot. So it was a few years old. And I always wanted something that was a little different. I always liked hard bodies,
Yeah,
but you're like, okay, how do you step that up a little bit? You know what I mean? And so, the Pathfinder, I know there was a two-door one. There was that B-52 bomber one,
yeah,
the yellow one, and then but nobody had done a four-door. And so I had an Acura way before that. That was a four-door. I liked that more, you know, just
more room.
more room, but also like the four-door, I guess that's kind of cooler at a point. When vehicles get old, all of a sudden they call a four-door like a parts car for a two-door, you know. But like at one point, the four-door stuff is cool until it's not, you know. And so I wanted to do that, you know what I mean. But like, unfortunately, I didn't do a lot of research, and I ran into a lot of problems with that. Of course, you know, things were just not as crazy back then, you know.
Did you have the plans to go that far with it when you first tore it apart?
Not to the Bob Grant level, not like that. I mean, I wanted it to be, it was definitely going to be on adjustable suspension. It was going to be body dropped, all that. How much further past that? I mean, you know, time would have told, but that's not really what happens. That truck was originally on hydraulics. I drove it daily on hydraulics.
Okay.
And even we didn't even wait for that long. I mean, it had Pathfinder wheels on it, which is like, oh, that's funny enough. They were stock on that vehicle, so 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 got like some 60 series tires and threw them on there. And like my buddy cut my springs down, and we like cranked the everything in the front, you know. And
Yeah.
so just kind of riding like crap, and got stuck in a parking lot because the cross members on that thing hanging way lower than a normal truck, and friends had to like lift the front off of it. It was like just static for a while, and then took it to Hoppos. Have you ever heard of Hoppos? Hoppos
Yeah.
is a big
Yep.
hydraulic outfit, and Hoppos is so huge now, but back then, like Art that did it, like I have lowrider buddies. I lived right by Pomona, and that's like where Style and Elite and like all those big lowrider clubs are from. So one of my closer friends from there was in Style, and he told me to go there. So I got it on hydraulics at first. I used to drive that daily on hydraulics for a while. So
And what made you cut it up after that?
because I wasn't a bitch. I don't know. That's the way the bug is, you know. Like you start off small, and then you just kind of keeps going up, and then nothing ever fills that void. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
you just got to always go a little further than everybody else. And I did have a couple buddies locally that were just cutting up whatever they could, you know. And like my one buddy, like before that Forbidden Fantasy show, they were like body dropping trucks for $700.
Wow.
Stock, not, yeah, obviously not stock flooring. That wasn't really a thing, but they were just cutting things up and doing that just so they could like have a ton of body drop trucks at the show, you know. Like, and so that's kind of where it started initially. So I kind of gutted the whole truck out. I went over to my buddies, you know, and like, but the cross member, the oil sump on that thing, all that stuff was like all in the way. And people weren't really cutting off the front of frames and like putting new front clips on them and doing all that stuff. I mean, that wasn't normal back then. It wasn't that common. And so if I would have really like known what to look for on the truck first, I don't know if I would have bought it, because that kind of stuff to make it the way I wanted to do it wasn't happening. It wasn't a thing,
And this is
you
what,
know.
late
So
late 90s, early 2000s?
Probably late 90s. Yeah.
What
Probably
year
pretty
was the
late 90s.
Pathfinder?
90. God, I'm thinking now, probably 91, maybe 93. Is it 91 or 93?
So I
God,
guess
man.
the end
I think it
of
was a 93. I think it was a 93.
so the
Yeah.
end of the '90s like that is, I guess, when everything started. People started really going extreme on these. So I guess you
Yeah,
kind of caught the beginning of that wave with yours.
I would say so. I remember like the reason I wanted to go with 18s initially on it was because there was like a hard body that had just put 18s on his truck and it looked low. You're like, man, like we're looking at it, like, dude, he tubbed his firewall. We're like, he tubbed his firewall. We're like, that was like so crazy. Like, what? And now people just cut their firewall out, make a new one. But like back then, that wasn't a thing. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, so the fact that he tubbed his firewall, we were just like, dude, that is so hardcore. So that now that was like an end. I'm like, okay, done. So it's going to be 18s no matter what. But then people started doing 18s and 20s. You know, they started doing 18s and 20s and all that stuff. And trying to get a really big wheel up front, the engineering just wasn't there yet for a lot of these trucks to be able to like go all the way down and like be functional still, and like
Yeah.
it just wasn't a thing. So
Enough
it wasn't even
lift to
thought.
clear.
It wasn't even thought about. You know, it just wasn't. And I remember I was with my buddy and we were at a party or like some kind of release party for some wheel company he was sponsored by, and we ended up they had a blowout on blems and they just had all these pallets of blems all the way as far as the eye could see. Start looking for them. I'm like, I can't even find any problems on these things. You know, I'm like, I'm just looking. I'm like, can I buy them? They were selling them by the weight. And so they had like 20s there, and we're talking, people are doing 18s and 20s. We called our buddy, he was like a body guy. We're like, start rolling our eyes, like, hey, if I cut out the rear door jambs in my truck, do you think like they could be made again? He goes, maybe. And they're like, sold. So that's literally what happened. I mean, it was like I said, at 18s and 20s, those were Alba Blaze wheels
Oh,
at the
I remember
time.
those.
Yeah, so that was originally what was on there. There's some old show pics from like West Coast and stuff with that thing. It came, the very first show it was at. Remember the orange Tahoe, Craig Ellers and Wendy's, the
Hmm.
orange that came out the exact show. My truck was parked right next to theirs. Theirs was prettier, of course, but the 18s and 20s of mine, it was like that's pretty hardcore. It was a kind of a unheard of thing at the time, you know, all cut into like that.
Now
So
you said Bob Grant got a hold of the truck. What all he do to it?
funny enough, that's actually where I met Bob, was at that exact show. I brought it out there.
Okay.
And if you know, Bob is super loud and vocal and talkative. I'm being sarcastic. He's all mellow. He's like,
Yep.
hey, what's going on? You know, he's all super chill. And so he kind of comes up to me and he's like, this is pretty cool, you know, and like, he's I want to do a tailgate skin on this. So like, he was kind of like trying to like, you know, throw you a tailgate skin, you know. And I don't think people were really taking their vehicles really far away to get built at that time. That wasn't really a thing, you know. And I had never heard of him, but he had
Yeah.
brought the Toyota Blazer out.
Yeah.
You know, it was, so he brought that out. You go look at it, and like I think I asked Courtney, one of those guys, like, dude, that good dude's legit. He built some crazy stuff. I'm like, all right, cool. You know, and then you find out he's kind of the power behind the throne, so to speak, or I guess as far as like a lot of stuff that was being built for other shops, you know, like he was the guy doing the roll pans and the tailgate skins and the cow combo, and like he was the guy, you know, but a little bit behind the scenes. And so eventually him and I talked a lot, and then I eventually towed my vehicle up there, and I had a couple buddies with me, and we're on this dirt road, just a freaking trailer. It's just like all this crap going everywhere. And they're like, dude, where the hell are you bringing your car? Like, what are you doing? Or, like, and they're trying to get me, like, I'm finally going down this dirt driveway to his shop, and people, they're like sitting here like, dude, you're making a mistake. Because they're like thinking it's like hills have eyes or something, like where we're at, you know? So, but it was kind of funny. But I mean, it all worked out. Like Bob and I are good friends to this day. We still talk, you know, and I felt bad now because I used to talk his ear off every day while he's working. I'm like, dude, that dude had to have lost so much money because I wouldn't shut up.
I've actually got him coming on here. I think next week we're supposed to get together and record. So
Good, great dude, man.
he's definitely a wizard when it comes to the metal work for sure. So
Ask him about this. I mean, he told me, he goes, man, I mean, he goes, the first truck I body dropped was like sheet metal screws or something. Like, everybody, you gotta remember that, man. That dude could build a whole vehicle from scratch, everything.
yep.
You know what I mean? Like, and you hear stuff like that, you're like, everything came from somewhere, you know. So I mean, that's kind of cool.
I'll
But
have to bring that up. So
yeah,
I think the one of the other things that's made your Pathfinder stand out is you didn't have the factory Nissan engine in that thing anymore.
no. And part of that was when I brought it up to Bob's, it started off as a tailgate skin. And as we see, that's not where it stopped. So everything just kind of kept progressing more and more and more and more and more. So I'm trying to think about the when I decided to do this. But Mike Finnegan, originally we thought about a motor swap because Mike Finnegan was just got his Tacoma turbocharged by
Yeah.
EL Prototypes, and we start talking to them, and they start hemming and hawing about things like, "Oh, your truck would be really cool, like a Skyline motor." That's actually how it started. Like that was the whole talk. We started talking about putting a Skyline motor in the thing, and then I knew the owner of J-Spec, which is the people like import Japanese engines and stuff. So I knew
Yeah.
the owner. I used to work with one of their buddies when I was at the stereo shop. So I kind of knew some people that can get me. I'm not, sorry, I wasn't going to keep talking with my hair coming out my hat like that. It looked ridiculous. So, um, but no, it was kind of funny. But then eventually one of my buddies goes, you know what? 350 is just so much easier. It's easy to get parts for all these things. So that was kind of how that happened. So, and then the whole thing with the blower, that was really probably what made it stand out is like I had a buddy that his dad had a blower sitting there for a boat or something. And I traded him like a Matt's Juggernaut subwoofer and like some money for it or something. And so that's it was really kind of ragtag, kind of put together. The Chevy, the 350 came out of like a car that just got totaled, and so we kind of just pulled that out. And I think I don't remember exactly what happened. I think I just literally dropped it in the frame rails, let it sit there, and then I think we towed it up. And Bob was the one that, at first, he was like, "Oh, let's do this, and then let's do this," and then it ended up being like, "I've never built a full frame before," and that's so I'm like, "Sure, Bob," and like he's not really known as being a chassis guy, but he can kind of do whatever.
Yeah.
But that's how that wasn't the original plan. I just want to do like a Ford 9-inch, with a 4 link or something like of that nature, pretty standard setup. I wanted a full back seat. I wanted it to function. That was the thing about mini trucks. You cut it up, then you make it as functional as you possibly can again. You know what I mean? That was the key. So I wanted a full back seat, all those things. And needless to say, I ended up with a full frame built from scratch with the independent suspension in the rear, obviously, on the trailing bars. And by the end of it, I'm like, Bob, where's the rear seat going to go? He's like, huh? So, yeah, so like it was kind of funny, but yeah,
What
that's
was
how it kind of
the
started.
what was the independent rear out of?
Supra.
So it's kind of a hodgepodge of all the manufacturers there.
Yeah, believe it or not. The nice thing is it's not a really small rear end, but it's all fin too, so it looks really cool. So you're kind of halfway aesthetics, halfway function. So the front control arms were out of a Supra, and they were kind of cool because they were kind of like a sculpted looking like aluminum control arm. You know what I mean? So I just kind of sanded down the seams on them and stuff of that nature, and you kind of polish them up. They just look really classy, and they looked really cool. And so yeah, and then the entire frame was like built, and then Bob wanted all the edges were radius, so he probably just had a guy in the back that was just like that was his whole job was sheet metal in and radius the whole frame. So it was like I remember I gave one of his guys an Explorer, and I'm like, here's an Explorer like to do extra this, like that I had. So, but yeah, whatever we do to keep that thing moving forward. So
Did it ever? You never finished it though, did you?
no, nobody has.
Now, was it ever running and driving after
No,
you had, when you had it?
it was never even wired and plumbed. So I mean, it was the full frame. It was the we had a essentially Schrader valve air set up on it at the time just to get it around, and all the frame and all the motor and the trans were mounted. But I had like much bigger aspirations. Like obviously that was just kind of a mock-up motor, and I wanted to build something a little bit more cool and solid. And I had a fuel cell that was built for it. It was built through Devious Customs. They were having somebody do their stuff at that point, so it was built there. So I had a fuel cell. I had like the steering column in there, like an I did it column, and I had a lot of that stuff there. But like, yeah, but as far as all the other functional stuff, I mean, and that's the point. Like I had been saving up, like buying hardlining parts, you know what I mean? Because that stuff really can be expensive. And so I was buying all stainless hardline parts. And the thing was, everything was built to such a degree. It's like you have to keep up to that degree
Yeah.
because you can't just like do something that cool and then just like half-ass it at the end. It's like it doesn't make a lot of sense. You know what I mean? It's like getting a Bugatti and duct taping on a body kit. You know, it just doesn't make sense. You're like, okay, you splash with the Bugatti. Don't want to get that professionally installed though. It's not that my car was that, but it was like, everything was built to a certain degree you had to keep up with, and I had bought like as high end parts on that thing. The headers were like one off, custom made for that vehicle. You don't really have that done too much that often. I remember here's an interesting one. The last thing I really got done on that, the core sport got made by a guy. If you ever heard of Robbie Gordon Racing?
Uh-uh.
Okay, so he's one of the big off-road race cars with all the pre-runners, Baja 5000. He did the Paris Dakar, so he's like crazy race background. His main fabricator is the guy that built my entire front core sport. And so when Courtney had saw that at a show, because he knew who the guy was, he's like, dude, that is the coolest thing at this whole show. And it was just my core sport. You know what I mean? And then I took it to Max at Bio Customs, and he built my whole radiator. He built the radiator, built my overflow. It was all flush mounted into there, and all my fans. So he did all that. So we were kind of in that mode of getting all that functional stuff done, So, but like it kind of stopped, I guess you could say. Like, I had another project kind of coming into the mix at the time, because the thing with the Pathfinder wasn't always money, but it was always like how much work it took to do what we were doing. You couldn't just have somebody stop and work on it for 2 years. It would have been an astronomical amount, So,
Yeah.
and it definitely wouldn't run a shop. You know what I mean? It would basically be, it would bury any shop. You know what I mean? So the big crazy custom projects aren't always what pay the bills, And you got people dropping that kind of coin now like crazy, but back then that wasn't really a thing.
Oh yeah, people
So
drop 200, 300, $500 million on vehicles now. It's crazy to me.
without blinking, man, without
Yeah.
blinking. And
So what
so
happened to the Pathfinder?
I get
Where'd it go?
tagged in it. I get tagged in it every 2 years when it changes hands, when people have new hopes and dreams and thinking something's going to happen. But that's the thing about it, though. It's such an it's such an ordeal with how much needs to be done on that thing. I had looked at it at a point and I said, okay, well, here's the situation I'm in, and this is what I have, and this is my ability to get it done. And I'm like, I had to be realistic about it at some point, like. I just didn't have the ability. I had moved out of the area, so it's like I wasn't as close to certain people that could help orchestrate this build. Financially, it would have been really just out of reach. So I just at some point I had to like just pack it up and say, you know what, it was really cool. I learned a lot through that, and then get rid of it. And what's weird about it is like I had the blue Chevy. I
Yeah.
don't know if you want me to pile into that,
Yeah,
but
we'll get into that. Yeah, let's get into that.
so that had been built so quickly, and I did it with a plan and a budget. And on the Pathfinder, like things have been redone on that vehicle 3-4 times. You know what I mean? Like, because you're just like, let's do this, let's do this. And you're like, okay, well, if you want to do this, you got to do this, and then something else comes and changes. And there's so many people that build custom cars that like they throw money at all the stuff that really doesn't make a lot of sense at the beginning, and then you have to change everything. And I did a lot of that, so I wasted a lot of money by not mapping out things properly. And there's so many angles and variables to that particular vehicle that like it would probably be next to impossible to map it out completely. But it was just way too many impulse buys and impulse decisions over a period of time that kept having to get changed. So everything probably was paid for 3 times over. But on the Chevy, when I got that, it was just like, this is the plan. This is what we're doing. This is it. If you try to talk me into anything else, that's not happening. And literally what happened with that one is our buddy Danny Becker, he was in Down to Earth at one point and built it. Was all through IF Custom, and eventually he was with us. I mean, he was with our Severed Ties group, and his truck was pulled into pieces. You know what I mean? Like he was working on some stuff, something didn't work out with somebody he was getting some work done by, and so his truck was just rusting away, and bodywork was cracking, and pile of interior, and like it just was sitting there for quite a while. We're all at a meeting at our favorite Round Table Pizza in Glendora, and Josh Freeman was there. And we ended up, we're sitting there talking about it. And I was going to buy a new truck. I was going to get a Titan, and I was just going to do it just strictly to be like make a crazier version than Courtney. So it was like 20s in the front, huh? Anyway, and I was like, that was the thing. So I was just going to try to like get that, and then just try to like, really, really make it crazy. And then Danny was talking about selling it, and Josh was talking about it. And I always wanted something that was different. So the Pathfinder nobody really had, so I wanted something that was different. So me owning like a Chevy, a full-size Chevy was kind of like not really what anybody would expect me to do,
Yeah.
because a little bit more run of the mill, And so I thinking about getting it, and then I ended up kind of put a plan together. I already had wheel sponsors, tire sponsors, and other stuff. So I'm like, if I could get this and roll this over, and I talked to Josh. Well, what, can you get this right now? Or are you down? He's like, I'm not really set up to do it. He's like, okay. I said, well, I could do it tomorrow. And so I ended up, I didn't want to step on Josh's toes because he was talking about it, and so I didn't want to do that. So I jumped in and got it, and I talked to Steve Platt. I don't know if you know Steve Platt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hot Wheels S10,
Yep.
Steel Flame. So Steve and I were good friends, and he lived in Vegas at the time, right next door to Count Customs. That's where Ryan Evans works, And
Yeah.
so he was sharing a shop with Musso Motorsports. So
Yeah. See, Adam
we,
from Usos actually spent the last week at my house. Him and his girl
yeah,
come in and played vacation and stayed here for a week.
mm-hmm,
So yeah,
yeah,
that whole crew I've been friends with forever.
yeah. So Adam was definitely a big part of that. You know what I mean? So when it got brought to them, it was just kind of rusting out, and we'll say kind of a dumb of me, because I think I went to pick up that truck right before Christmas, and I drove it. And Danny didn't live that close. He lived in like Calabasas. This was a good 45 minutes an hour drive late at night. It was on balding tires, and I drove it on a milk crate, like no joke. And I drove it on a milk crate, drove it all the way there, and I think we bolted one seat in, and then after Christmas, my family after Christmas, I drove it straight to Vegas that same way, like a jackass. Drove it to Vegas, and I didn't tell any of my buddies. I didn't tell anybody, my buddies in Vegas whatsoever. But we had kind of orchestrated it between Steve Platt, which is a stereo guy, and then Musso would be in that shop, and then talk to Ryan about it. So it was like Steve would handle some of the stereo stuff, interior, orchestrate the interior. Musso would take care of the body work and get the paint laid, and then Ryan Evans would come in and do the pinstriping and lay out the flames and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So
I didn't realize that Joe and Adam had done that.
yeah. And then, funny enough, how it ended up becoming blue, which is closest thing to my gang color other than black, is I went in and talked to John O'Neill. I was like, "What color do you want it, dude?" This one he still worked at Sport Truck.
Yeah.
And so I literally asked him. I was like, "I'm building this thing, and I'm going to buy it. I'm going to have it for a little bit, but I'm eventually going to, I'm not going to keep it for too long. I'm going to buy it, finish it, have fun with it, flip it." And I was like, "What color do you want?" He's like, "We haven't had blue in a while." So all right, cool, let's be blue. And I was happy he said that, because I do like the color, but at the same point, you can't put 3 red trucks on the cover back to back.
Yeah.
You run into that. So that's part of why it turned blue. But I did want my own twist on it. You know what I mean? Like, it had metal flake flames on it, which you really didn't see that, especially at that time. We just did a little twist on it. And I had a buddy with lowrider who had in his interior, he had really mild glitter vinyl on it. I was like, okay, that could be kind of cool. I'll do a little spin on the outside, paint on the inside, but it's got to be kind of not a lot of it. You know what I mean? Just and it tied in real well. It looked good, And I worked for when I built it, I worked for that a company that made TVs for cars, and so it had a 10.4-inch monitor in the front dash and the rear, which at that time was super cool. That was pretty crazy. So yeah.
So you had both those vehicles built before you ever started at the magazine.
Yeah. The blue truck hadn't been shot yet, though. It hadn't been shot until it was already done. But when I got the job, it was right around that time when I finished that vehicle, but I'd already talked to John, and right at that point, John had moved on, so he wasn't working there. And but Finnegan was still the editor there. And so he's like, all right, when are we shooting this thing? And then, for Truck and Magazine, Steve Warner was running that. And he's kind of like, hey, when are we shooting your truck? I'm like, I promised it to Mike. So I'm telling that to my boss. No, right as I start, you know what I mean? So I don't think he knew I owned anything, that I came to work the first day, laid the thing out. So Mike and I used to drive that thing to work, a quarter-inch off the ground, because it was only had a quarter-inch of sheet metal, quarter-inch plate under the doors. So there's quite a bit cut off the bottom of that truck.
And that was a cover as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was on the cover of Sport Truck, and I was on the cover of Low Life Video.
Did you shoot both the Pathfinder and the blue truck cover, or somebody else shoot them?
No, funny enough, I didn't shoot either one. So I wasn't even doing the photography at that point when my Pathfinder was done, and so
because it was in the studio, right?
Yeah, so Lance had God, why am I drawing up? Wes Allison do it,
Yeah.
which, I mean, he's goat for so many
For
photographer
sure.
wise. Yeah. But what a lot of people don't realize is what originally was going to happen. There's a pretty crazy frame pic I have of my vehicle. I'll text it to you, but it's like there's a full photo shoot that was done just on my frame,
I think I
and
remember that.
nobody's really seen it. And it's never been in a magazine really. I mean, unless it was like in a graffiti shot or something, but it was shot and it was done in the driveway, and then we had it all decked out, and it was a candy powder coat when candy powder coat really was not a thing,
Yeah.
that was like, it was custom made and custom ordered and next day aired down to me to get that done for a show. And then, but Lance did that because when he shot the truck, he wanted to do like a cut, not a cutaway really, but like, how we're like, you can kind of see through kind of doing like the x-ray kind of image of it. And
Yeah.
so, when he did it, like Lance wasn't in town. So when he did it, he couldn't get the angles to match up. So he couldn't like really get it proper to match up. He's like, how did Lance shoot this? What angle? And like, it was in a driveway at an angle and he was shooting like this. And then now Wes is trying to recreate that exact same angle to match up to him. And it wasn't happening. So, and that frame never ran in the magazine. After it ran through, I said, Lance, you did not post a full frame shot of a completely decked out frame, like every nut and bolt, and it was never in the magazine. I was like, dude. So like that hurt. It did, because that frame was like probably at that time was definitely the craziest thing had built.
There's
Had
only a
built.
few guys that had that. You, Ballard,
Yeah,
there was only a few that had the high
yeah.
end stuff.
There was not many, and this is probably back in 2001. And I don't know if there's, and that was full frame. It wasn't a front clip of anything else. Every single piece was made from scratch,
Yeah.
everything. And then it also had a rear independent rear suspension, but it was on trailing bars with the airbags in front of it. So that had never been redone either. So a lot of it was very unique, like nothing had been to that level that I had seen.
I don't think there's not been any other Pathfinders built to that level since then, has there?
No, I've seen a couple clean ones though.
Yeah.
Funny enough, there was a crazy one that was being built out of Arizona right at the same time mine was being done. And it was by Ryan Leonard, and he was a Severed Ties guy in Phoenix. Unfortunately, rest his soul, passed away. Great dude, but he had one that was like built as a full tube chassis, roof chopped off, permanent convertible, 4-door Pathfinder, and and it never got finished. Shocker, I know. That's the curse of those things, right? But there's a couple running around that I've seen that are really nice, clean builds. You know what I mean? Maybe not quite as overboard crazy, but like absolutely respectful, nice, clean builds, So, but
It was always cool to see the off the wall stuff because people did the Blazers and all that stuff, but to see
yeah,
like because I shot that one exterior that was done, or I guess
yeah.
the first exterior, the Mr. Scrape one,
Is that the green one?
the green and silver. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I maybe wrote. Did I write the article for that? Maybe, or did you?
I'm not sure. I know Nick did the Photoshop stuff on it.
Okay, 'cause I remember I think I had written some of the articles for some of the stuff you had sent in before, and that may have been one of them. I don't
Because it
remember,
was
but I remember
that
the
and
truck.
the blue Blazer that were shot together. There was on the
Yeah,
cover.
yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to remember, but I remember that. I remember the truck for sure. But
Yeah.
but yeah, and then yeah, and then we kept switching things up, put the Frontier front end and all that kind of stuff on there too. So it just kind of kept going. But it was a fun. I met a lot of people through that truck, so I can't ever say that I regret it. You know what I mean? Like obviously we used to call it Project I should have bought a house, is what we used to call it as a joke. But the amount of people in the industry I met, and the amount of all the people that I knew that were it just kept moving. Prolific people that are friends. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people, if it wasn't for that truck, I probably wouldn't have met them. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? If it wasn't for that truck, would I ever worked for the magazine? If it wasn't for that truck, would I have ever built and finished the Chevy? I don't think so, because that's what kind of spun all that forward. You know what I mean? So it kind of put me into that mindset. But it also I learned a lot of my mistakes, and that's why the blue Chevy, start to finish, from it was running. It was already the suspension was done, but it was all rusted and out, and but it was done in 3 months. Bodywork, paint, interior from scratch, stereo fixed, all that kind of stuff, and running and everything within 3 months,
It's
start
crazy
to
how
finish.
certain vehicles can be your persona for the rest of your life. You
Yeah,
build that, everybody's like, oh, that's Chad Lucas. Oh, he's the one with the Pathfinder. Like,
yeah, And
It's
I
crazy
feel,
that one vehicle can tag you forever.
yeah, it's crazy. You know, like I said, I still get, it's probably been, I mean, it's probably past ownership at least 6, 7 times, and every time there's like a couple pieces missing. You know, it's like every time you see it, like, okay, wheels are gone, okay, blower's gone, okay, this is gone,
Yeah.
steering column's gone, you know, and like it just, and there was the fuel cell, like who knows what's left anymore, you know. And I've at least had a couple of the people that have bought it at some point hit me up, ask me questions, you know, and I'm like, best of luck. So, and people just don't realize what an ordeal is. I mean, what an ordeal that vehicle is. You can't be some guy that just does mild little things here and there. You know what I mean? You got to be a pretty in-depth fabricator.
Yeah.
And for somebody that's going to do it on their own, it gives you a great start with a lot of work done to it, you know. But for the average person, I mean, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. You know what I mean? Because at that point with that kind of vehicle, it's all, I mean, whatever you're going to put into it, you're not going to break even on it. You know,
Now,
that's just,
I guess after you sold both those vehicles, would you sold, you said the blue truck right before you moved, and did you sell the
yeah.
Pathfinder after you moved?
Yeah, so I sold my blue truck 2 weeks before I moved to Boise, Idaho, but I'd also had a F-150 that was stock floored. It was being built by Truckin' Magazine, and it was like IF Custom had done that. And so a lot of people hadn't seen that. It was like Dodge Viper blue on the top, silver on the bottom. It was actually painted by PPG. Like it was painted
Oh,
by
no.
them directly. Yeah. And so that didn't really, that ended up in Colorado, but I sold my blue truck 2 weeks before I moved here. Still had like, God, I probably still had 4 vehicles at the time. Like I had fortunately my parents had property like for their work, and I just had some stuff in the back, you know, and so I had that. And then after a little while, I mean, it just kind of reality hit, and some people offered to, hey, I'll give you cash and this for the Pathfinder, and I'm like, and it was at least going to go to somebody probably I thought I had a little more ability to finish it, you know, and then that didn't happen. It kept trading hands, you know what I mean? And so,
Yeah.
and then even the vehicles that I got traded, those changed hands real quick too, because everybody talked me out of everything, traded this, trade this, and you know what I mean? But once I had finished the Chevy though, and did it the way I did, well, that's the way you do it. You know, like I just wham, bam, got it done. And I enjoyed it. We had a lot of fun with it. You know what I mean? Like we drove that thing to the Texas heat wave from California. We drove it to a drop zone in Oregon, you know, like we put some miles on that thing,
Yeah.
and it's a pretty extreme vehicle, you know? So, yeah, we had a lot of fun with that. Mike Alexander and I drove that to Texas heat wave with no air conditioner.
Mm. And they call it Texas heat wave for a reason, though, too. Is the
Oh
bad part.
man, we sweated through those seats, man. I'm telling you that. But like, well, we thought the AC was all working, but like right before we left, they were trying to recharge it, and we found there was a hole in it, and so we couldn't really do with anything at the time. So we just, I think we went and bought these like fans that can hang around our neck, you know, like it was so bad. But we did it. We're just like, screw it, man. So, but it was a lot of fun, you know. It was worth it, and glad we did it, you know. Being able to have the truck out there and then, you know, drag it around was fun.
Yeah. So after you sold all those, I guess you've kind of taken a little bit of a break on custom vehicles to your new project.
We'll call it a lot. I'll say it a long. So people are like, where the hell did you go, man?
Well,
Now I go to see.
I took 10 years on mine. That's why my first SEMA bill is called Project Decade, because it was 10 years from my last show vehicle, quote unquote, to that.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the thing is I when I moved away, I never really had the room, or like, I mean, I was never a deadbeat. All my bills were paid, you know what I mean? But like I wasn't quite as connected up here as I was down there. So getting things done or worked on, or if I'm just living with somebody, you know, whatever I'm doing, I mean, so that didn't really happen, and I was never really in the position to have anything until I bought a house like maybe, I don't know, like 4 years ago, a little longer than that now. But once I got my ex-girlfriend's stuff out of the other side of the garage, I was like, I said, you got to move this stuff because I got a car on the way. And so I was really trying to find something that that I wanted to build, you know what I mean? So, but I also wanted something that was not going to be so overkill. I wanted something to get me back in the scene. I was never, not that I ever like didn't love it, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but I just realized that like I could never have anything that was kind of moderately half-assed and just kind of half built and like whatever and just trickles around for 10 years. That's not what I wanted. Like I want something that I could, you know, make it pretty solid pretty quick. You know what I mean? Like, and so there's a lot of vehicles that I was looking at, and at the end of the day, I had to also measure to see what would fit in the garage because some of the old cars are really long. You know, like I think like a Ford Lincoln is as long as my Tundra. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's so long, and I'm like, and I've always really liked Buick Rivieras.
It's
Primarily the
not your
60s.
standard car that they stand out
No,
because the lines on them.
yeah, and the 63 to 65, I really like those years. Like I'm not as big of a fan of the stuff after that. Like I like cruisers more than muscle cars,
Yeah.
and a lot of the cruisers after 65 ish start getting to like a body style that I'm not much of a fan of. And now you have some like muscle cars in the late 60s that look cool, but I'm not really a big muscle car guy. I like cruisers. So usually 65 and before that's usually where that kind of fills in. So
What was it? I heard someone on another podcast talking about the late 60s, early 70s is when all the designers quit doing drugs. So that's when all the vehicles
Joe
started getting
Rogan,
ugly.
yeah. Rogan talks about that. Yeah, Joe Rogan talks about that for
That might have
sure.
been where I heard it at. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where he talks about that because, and that's the thing. Even the stuff what he likes on his stuff, it's not really my cup of tea. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, everything has its place, but like,
Yeah.
the late '60s Camaros some of those could be pretty cool, but it's still not what I'm into.
Same.
Like, I like cruisers, whether it was like an Impala or whether it was like a Lincoln or like even the Riviera. And the Riviera is an interesting one because there has been a little bit of a learning curve with this one too. And I don't want to say it took me back to my thoughts on the Pathfinder because when we bought the Pathfinder, we're like, oh, cool, we're gonna like put this on the ground, da 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 da. But we didn't ever look underneath it to see what was going on. I just figured it was the same as a hard body. So what's the big deal,
Let the
right?
frame and be
And,
done.
and you're so young, you don't even know what to look for because you're naive. And now I look under it, I'm like, okay, but you see the oil sump hung way down, the cross members are all way lower, all the suspension's different, and people weren't clipping off front ends, and putting different front ends on them. That wasn't the thing. So I that was a big learning curve, and I'm like, so when I got the Riviera, it had a blown nail head in it, and those were very expensive to replace. So I tracked another one down out of Vegas, and I hit up one of my buddies on there and said, hey, can you have somebody go look at this, and I'll pay them for their time. And like, yeah, everything's good on this motor. All right, cool. Went to go pick it up, and because I was on the way down for a road trip to see family, and found out that motor was destroyed too. So I was like, so now I had two blown nail heads, which sucked. I was just like, man, I found out the guy never even went to go look at it. He just talked to the guy on the phone. I'm like, well, that killed the whole
That
point of why I
sucks.
stopped. Yeah, it is what it is. But at that point, like a nailhead motor is such a particular motor that the average guy that rebuilds a small block, the way to rebuild that motor is not the same. There's different rules that apply. So there's only a handful of people that I'm aware of that I follow the forums that really do that. And it's like 10 grand to rebuild it. And it's like in nowhere close to where you're at. And
Yeah.
where I'm at in Boise, Idaho is more of an isolated area. So I went full Resto Mod LS swap with it, which if you're a traditionalist, I don't care. Suck it.
It's
But
not a full restoration at that point, so
yeah, so
nothing.
that's it. And I'm a custom car guy anyway. I don't care if it was numbers matching. I'd probably still switch it.
I don't think there's very many people that worry about the numbers matching stuff anymore.
Some of that stuff, like there's a couple Grand Sports that have been going in the mid hundreds. The GS 65s, like for like 135, 150 right now for those particular models. But I've always been a custom guy, and I'm like, I would rather buy a car that's more beat up that needs to be fixed up that I could do my way, as opposed to like, trying to get the matching stickers on the thing under the hood. I really don't
Yep.
care. But also, plus going the LS route, as much of a cop out as the people might think that is, it's like it looks really good. But also at that point, I could be 110 degrees with my vintage air peaked and I'm not overheating anything.
Yeah.
But also, if I need to get anything fixed on it up here, I mean, it's not hard. You know what I mean? It's such a straightforward motor comparatively to a nail head, which I'd have to go ship it somewhere. And it just didn't make any sense. So longevity wise and, ease of everything, we went that route. So, but it's cool. It's over budget. That's how you have fun, right?
They all are. I had
Yeah.
a tag on one of the trailers, custom trailers I'd built. The tag on it said over budget. Everybody's like, "Oh, that's cool." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Yes," because it's over budget for everything.
Funny enough, the blue Chevy was not. I had a budget for it. We hit it on the mark within about $500, and when I sold it, I actually ended up coming out a little ahead on it.
So, with you trying to get this Riviera wrapped up, how much longer you think you got on it?
Hard to say. I mean, I would really like it to be done, everything within a year, probably, because like it's running, driving, functionality wise, all the stuff's done. So the motor's all perfect, AC's all perfect, air system's perfect. I'm building all the stereo stuff right now, so I'm just built some kick panels for it, doing the trunk setup, and I'm currently building all of that. But I have surgery in a
That's
week
what's
and a
behind
half.
you.
Yeah, there's piles of stuff there, headlights and other stuff. There's a router there, of course. So not for a computer, a different kind of router for wood. But yeah, so all that kind of stuff is being currently done. And then interiors, the dash is done. Um, but some of the part of it needs the paint needs to come back down. I'm going to redo some stuff on the back of the car, so that I'm going to be dreading that. So I kind of bought this car partially painted to save money, but that backfired. So yeah,
That's how it
that'll.
works.
Well, I'm gonna have to save money for a little while to get that done properly because I don't want the same problems. I mean, I don't want to get a paint something out of the paint shop and it being a 10-footer, and paint is absurdly expensive now. So,
Yeah.
but it's a cool car, man. I mean, it's a cool car. Those things got to look, you know what I mean? And I didn't want the so common same thing. I didn't want the very common vehicle. I didn't want. I mean, Cadillacs are cool, like Lincolns are cool, but it's pretty common. But what's funny about it, how many vehicles are out there that people build that everyone likes, but there's not a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the
Riviera's one
few.
of them.
It's one of the few. Everybody loves the look of them because how angry those things look in the front, and I already got rid of the headlights in the front, and everybody likes them. Then I kind of found out why people don't build them as much. Ran, well, I ran into the same problem I did with a Pathfinder. You do research like, okay, cool, we're just going to throw a different motor in this, blah, 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 blah. Then come to find out, a nailhead has a mid-sump oil pan. It's right in the middle. You can't put a normal motor, like a motor with a rear sump in it, because of the fact that the steering passes through it. So some people will cut the firewall out and drop the thing way back, but then you don't have AC. And so it's like, where's your compromise? So it has had to figure all that out. Cross member had to be modified. It's got like a billet aluminum and fabricated aluminum mid-sump oil pan from a company that makes drifting cars. You know what I mean? Like Siki is a company like in New Jersey. So, and it's got a remote mount filter. So all that stuff had to be modified to make that all work, so still a far cry from chopping up a mini truck, but like it's on air, and it runs, and I got the full motor swap with all the Holley engine management and fuel injection in it. So it's a nice and clean. When I pop the hood, people are pretty stoked on it. It's a
Nice.
clean ride.
So how do people find you online when they want to see what you're up to?
Not too much fun. A lot of pictures of my dog, man. I don't have any kids, so that
I'm
is
the same way.
There's my co-pilot back there, passed out. She's not dead, I promise. So passed out from food coma. No, but funny enough, yeah, I probably I don't really tell people to get on my Facebook, you know what I mean, because that's just more like personal friends, family type stuff. But my Instagram is probably a little more Wild West, It's Chad and Maze, and so I was used to be my name with the number after that. Then it got hacked, and then I made it me and my dog, and that was kind of a joke because of the fact that like my dog's probably on there too often. And then people said, Keith, like, we want to see more pictures of your dog. But now on occasion you'll find car stuff on there too, or truck stuff. You never know. But it's like Chad and Maze, like ChadNMaze. So as I keep building the car, stuff will keep going on that. But usually it's mostly nonsense. It's on there. You can see you can tell when I'm bored or not. So that's pretty much what it is.
Well, I guess you'll be bored for the next few weeks. That he's going to go a little surgery there.
Yeah, so I'm going to be laid up in bed for a little while, so it's going to be me. You're going to really be able to see how bored I can get, or if the drugs are taking play, and I can't take, credit for any of it. So whatever happens, it's an alter ego, at least for a little while.
Well, it's definitely good to catch up. Like I said, I've been trying to link up with all the editors I've worked with for the last 20 plus years. People that's been involved in what I do. So it's definitely cool to chat a little bit and bring up some old stories.
Absolutely. And it's definitely it's nice to be back and have something again. And, I'm kind of reconnecting with a lot of people I hadn't talked to in a while. So, I mean, that's all fun. And it's all something that, I've definitely missed, you know what I mean? But like, just, you never know where life takes you, you know what I mean? So, but as long as you get back to wasting money on passions.
It's not wasting if you're having fun, right?
That was true. That was said in every sense. It's not meant to be a negative term. We always say, if it's not over budget, did you really have fun building it, right?
Yep.
So yeah, I'm already over budget. We're not done yet. So, but it's going to keep going.
Budgets don't exist in real life.
Hey, we'll see how budget. You have a loose idea. Then after that, there's always something cooler. You're like, all right, I guess we're gonna have to go that route. So. But yeah, we'll see. But it already looks good. It's fun to drive. I mean, people like it. And up here in Boise, Idaho, not much to compete with.
Yeah.
So people see it and they're like, "Oh man, it's so cool." I'm like, that's crazy. I'm like, it's pretty mild compared to my old ones 20 years ago, but it was,
We're glad to see
it's been
you
fun.
back in it to some degree for sure.
Definitely
So
appreciate that for sure, man. And happy to be on here, and we could talk about some other chaos some other time.
I don't know if the statute of limitations is over on some of that stuff. So you might want to.
I never got fired for anything, for anything in that realm. So I don't know, just I don't know, a lot of interestingly dumb stuff that I probably wouldn't do now, like driving that truck to Vegas on bald tires. And I think I had my ex-girlfriend following me at the time, I'm like, it was just, I don't know, like I don't know, I'm not that brave now. That's why I'm going through all these surgeries, because all my past injuries, just all the dumb stuff I did from the past is all catching up to me. So I'm trying to have
Yeah.
more catch up to me. So
All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on, man. We'll look for you online.
absolutely, I appreciate it. Thank you.